Okay, so in my latest video, I made a Japanese rock song about sitting, and I decided that every time I do something kind of crazy, I will make an additional video that teaches people and shows people how I did the thing, because it's not difficult. Like, I'm not actually good at stuff, and you could do this as well. Like, there's nothing I'm doing that's special. Anyone can do this, so I'm going to teach you how to do this. Because of that, this video is directed towards three different audiences. One, people who have no idea what the hell's going on, have never touched music before, and maybe they're just curious about how making a song actually works. Two, people who maybe play an instrument, maybe know a little bit of music theory, never made a song before, want to know how that works. And three, people who maybe make songs but don't do music production, and they want to know some music production tips. So this is gonna be a terrible video for me to edit. I already know that much, at least. Anyways, let's get started. So I am in my DAW, digital audio workstation. I use FL Studio and Reaper. For this project, I used FL Studio. And how do I even start? So when you're making a song, fundamentally what you're trying to do is you're trying to paint an audio canvas full of sound. So sound is just wiggling vibrations, and depending on how fast these vibrations wiggle through the air determines the notes that we hear. So this is the entire audio spectrum for human hearing. It goes down to 20 hertz and goes up to 20,000 hertz. And if I play this song, you can see that the entire spectrum here is painted, and the way that things are shaped determines the audio and tonal quality. Now, for us in this case, rock songs, and honestly, most songs that use real instruments are, in my opinion, easier to mix. Besides drums, but I guess we'll get to that. We know that the bass guitar fills out the bass. We know that the guitar fills out the mids and a lot of the highs and stuff. We know, depending on where the vocals are, I guess depending on the vocal range of the singer, that it'll fill out a bunch of the mids. And then we know that the drums, the kick drums, fills out a bunch of the low end, and the hi-hats and the cymbals and the snares fill out the higher ends. So you can get a really good sounding song without doing a lot of work, as long as you keep the instruments in their audio sweet spots. I don't know. Now let's get into what actually makes something musical. So music is just combinations of pitch and rhythm. You need both of them to make something melodic, and we will get into this more later on. So this song has a bass guitar, it has two guitars, it has vocals, and it has drums. Music theory wise, a Japanese pop rock song, a lot of them uses the same chord progression, which is called the Royal Road progression in English, and it's 4-5-3-6. Now, when I say it uses the same chord progression, it doesn't just use that progression. It uses it in the context of a longer, winding path. A lot of Japanese modern rock and pop music is inspired by jazz, and it's inspired by these crazy chord changes. Now, in this case, this is a very simple song, so I don't do anything too crazy music theory-wise. I only do one thing that is non-diatonic, which we will get to, but fundamentally what I have is a 4-5-3-6, and then a 4-5-6, 4-5-3-6, 4-5-1. I even labeled it over here. And that basically happens the entire song. So if it happens the entire song, how do you keep things interesting? Well, you keep things interesting by adding stuff and taking stuff away. You keep things interesting by changing up the melody, by changing up the rhythm. So let's just look through this one by one. And remember that I am writing this song in a suboptimal way. One, it was 15 hours straight, which is twice as long as the last time I did something like this. And luckily, this song is half as shitty. But I did write this song for the video, so the structure of the song is probably not what a normal Japanese pop rock song is like, but I had to write it for the video, and that's what we have. So let's see. At the beginning, we have what's just establishing the chord progression. 4, 5, 3, 6, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 3, 6, 4, 5, 1. Now that we established the chord progression, if we repeat it as it is, it's boring now. So let's add something new. Let's add something on top of it. This is where the vocals come in. Okay, now that we added the vocals in, and we did it twice, once it gets to the third or fourth time of repeating something, it starts to get boring. So now we have to really change it up. We changed this up by switching the strumming pattern of the guitar, which is the rhythm. We changed it up by switching up how the bass guitar is working. So currently, all the bass guitar has been doing is playing the root notes of all of these chords. Now we will make the bass guitar more complicated. But if we make something more complicated, we want to make something else simpler. Because of that, the vocals in this case are now simpler. And it's just this chorus that repeats over and over again. Okay, so the guitar is still playing 4, 5, 3, 6. It's still playing the Royal Road progression. And the bass guitar is now going through the triads, the notes in the triads, hopping around a little bit. And the drums also get a little bit more sparse. I don't really know how to describe what the hell I do on drums, because I'm pretty bad at drums. Drums is my worst instruments that I say that I play. So what I do with drums is that really, you listen to a lot of rock songs, you get a feel of how people do things, and honestly, I just did some shit that worked out if I play them solo. It was a bit too fast when the vocals in the chorus were slowing things down. So I knew I needed to give it room, give it space to breathe. So that's how that happened. When it comes to the lead guitar, honestly, what I did here was that I just improvised. I basically just used a pentatonic scale, to be honest. This was not something I gave a lot of thought to. But you can hear that because I am adding something onto it, I need to take something away as well. So there are no vocals, but I also want to make sure that I'm not flooding the listener's ears too much. So I actually drop back the bass guitar and the drums and the normal guitar to the more familiar pattern that we established at the very beginning. When you are trying to make a song, you have to think about what you want your listeners to hear, what you want your listeners to focus on, to pay attention to. This is different if you're doing some kind of future bass where you want ear candy, you want little like things sprinkled around in the stereo field. But in this case, where we have 4 instruments, give the users something to focus on. So after the solo, I just repeat the chorus again. It just ends, to be honest. It just ends because I needed a way to end the video. So the intro beginning here was made so that I had room to introduce the Swate dude, who it's a surprisingly very obscure meme. And then the chorus in the middle here is for me to do a little commentary about how the lyrics are super depressing. If you do not know Japanese, the lyrics at the very beginning are kind of funny, and then yeah, it takes a very, not a very dark turn, but a pretty dark turn. I have it written down here. There's some of them that I did not use, but for those who don't know Japanese, all it's saying is, "Oh wow, I love McDonald's." it's saying, "Oh wow, I love McDonald's coffee or Wi-Fi," and just sitting around and hanging out. And if whenever I'm sitting, as long as I'm sitting, everything's fine. I love it. As I am not doing a direct translation, just saying. And then it makes a very hard left into dream your dreams and remember to take control of your life. And being an adult sucks, and there's a lot of tears, but I'll survive, I guess, at least for now. Actually, writing lyrics for songs, that's a completely different video that I will not get into because I really do not know how to write good lyrics. Writing lyrics in Japanese, so much easier than in English though, because a lot of things rhyme. Okay, so let's go to the final interesting part of the music theory in this. So we talked about how the 4-5-3-6 progression is used a lot in Japanese pop and rock songs, and it's usually not used on its own, it's used in combination with a lot of different techniques and stuff that we do not get into in this song because this is a very simple song that I made in the middle of the night. But we have this one part that is non-diatonic, so it's outside of the key that the song's in. So I'm going to play that part. It's in the guitar section. So it's 4, 5, 3, 6, 4, 5, 1. And you can hear that the 1 chord changes here. And that's because I go from a normal 1 chord. Maybe I should pull out my guitar for this. So I go from my normal 1 chord, which is here, and I switch it to be a dominant 7 chord. When we turn it into a dominant 7th chord, that means that we're adding a minor 7th to the major triad. So we remove the pinky in this case, and this turns it into a dominant 7th chord. Now, what happens when a 1 chord turns into a dominant 7th chord? Well, usually, the only diatonic chord that has a dominant 7th is the 5 chord, which is the dominant chord. Now, when we make the 1 chord into a dominant 7th chord, we're implying that it is the 5 chord of something, and coincidentally, I guess not coincidentally, it's just how the circle of fifths works, but coincidentally, the 1 dominant 7th actually is the 5 of the 4 chord here. So, by doing a dominant 7, we tonicize the 4 chord. What does this mean? This means that when you do this, you can now change keys. You can now go through the circle of fifths. You can move leftwards on the circle of fifths by 1 and basically make your song into a completely different key. I do not do this, unfortunately, because, again, deadline and background music for a video. A very stupid, funny video that everyone should watch because it took a long time. But if I were to actually employ more techniques, then I would make the chord progression longer by doing a key change like this. So 1 dominant 7 into the 4. Why does this actually work? It's because you have this, And then this note sounds like it wants to lead somewhere. Where does it want to lead? It wants to lead downwards, right? Like this sounds good. And where's this note? It's in the 4 chord here. Anyways, now there's another part of this song, which it's not a part of this song because I didn't put it in, but if I were to have a bridge section, a section that's slower, what you can do, which isn't really a part of Japanese rock pop, but just in general how a lot of rock music is that you could turn it into Lydian. So if you have the 4-5-3-6 chord progression and you're trying to slow it down, you're trying to change it up a little bit, what you could do is you could do something like 4, 5, 3, pause on the 3, and I'm doing a very slow strum. So imagine this is some bridge, everything's slowed down, there's some very sad verse lyrics going on. And then what you can do is that if you switch to Lydian mode now, because the minor 3 is part of the Lydian mode, and you've slowed it down, you've kept it on the 3 for a while, now you can give it a more hopeful tone by doing major 1, major 2, and then the 5. Doesn't that sound hopeful? Doesn't that sound cheery? Maybe not cheery. Doesn't that sound bittersweet? So nice, so nice. Maybe I will do this in another song. So hopeful. Totally not like the world we're in right now. Anyways, okay, that's the music theory part of it. Let's get into the actual production aspect. So again, what I was saying before, where your job is to really paint the spectral field, the entire audio spectrum with sound. You're trying to do it in a musical way. You're trying to make sure that people can focus on what you want them to focus on. You want them to pay attention to the correct things. Let's go through and see how you can do that production-wise. So at the very beginning here, we have the guitar, we have the bass, and we have the drums. And this is just establishing the sonic fingerprint. So you can see that like there's this like heavier on the lows and mids, and then it drops off. There's not too much highs here, but when we get to the vocals, now we want the vocals to fit into the spectrum that we created. How do we do that? Well, one way that we can do this is by this thing called sidechaining. So, for instance, I have the vocals over here on this bus, and it is sidechained to both the guitar and the bass guitar. And it does that so that you can, that's a separate sidechain, so that you're carving out space in the audio for the vocals to sit in. If I select the vocals here, and then I switch between the two audio spectrums, you can see that what I really want is for the vocals to stand out more in the mids here. So I make it so that if the vocals are here, it actually carves out some of the audio. It lowers the audio of the guitars in this particular spot. And I do the same with the bass guitar. So what I'm just doing is that I'm saying that, oh, there's this one part where the vocals are really focused in, the harmonics are really in, and I just want to make sure that there's a little bit more room that I carve out in the bass guitar for this. For people who do not have Neutron, which is the equalizer that I'm using, you could get a free dynamic EQ called TDR Nova. And where the hell is it? TDR Nova, here it is. I don't even know how to explain like all these like different effects and everything, but basically equalizers, carving out stuff in the spectrum, and what you can do is that you can make it so that instead of carving things out always, you can carve it out when the audio goes over a certain amount. And you can make it so that the audio doesn't have to be the thing that's being inputted into the EQ, but from a separate audio source. That's basically what sidechain is doing. Sidechain is just you're sending the audio signal into a different spot where it's not actually outputting that audio signal, it's just using it to process something else. So this guitar has the vocal sidechained into it, and TDR Nova supports that type of thing. If you're using FL Studio, what you would do is that there's this interior sidechain, and you want it to be an external, what the fuck? Internal, external, English, Jesus. And then over here for processing, there's this sidechain thing, and then you could select vocals, and then it'll work. And then there are all these knobs, and you could, I don't know, read the manual. That's how you learn. So yeah, TDR Nova, very good for a free dynamic EQ. One thing that it doesn't do, which I wish that it does, is mid-side EQ, but you don't need to worry about that because we're making a basic rock song. So anyways, a lot of mixing is just carving out different areas of the spectrum and making room for other instruments to be able to get inserted into the song without everything sounding like a muddy mess. So when the lead guitar comes in, obviously I need to now sidechain the lead guitar into my normal guitar because they're the same instruments. I mean, they're different guitars, but they occupy the same sonic range, and I want to make sure that the lead guitar takes precedence. So you can see here that I am sidechaining a bit of the rhythm guitar to make room for the lead guitar. Now, of course, there are different other ways you can make one instrument stand out over another instrument. The lead guitar does have different effects on it, and I do play the lead guitar with a metal pick, while the normal rhythm guitar, I'm just playing with my fingers. If you actually listen to the clean audio signal, it's not that great. Let me turn off all effects. Yeah, so this is the clean signal. And then if you add on a hella lot of effects on it, then that happens. I can't even say a hella lot of effects, it's like 3 different effects, that's it. If you are like recording guitar, I do recommend always recording clean guitar so that you can add on the effects later. There really isn't a good reason to bake in your effects. You could always bake them in later. If you have guitar pedals, you could just route an audio out through your guitar pedal and then back into your computer and record that if you want. Just if you have a clean guitar recording, that is so much more versatile. Yeah, super dry, no reverb at all. And then you add in all of the different effects, and then and it sounds like that, which actually sounds like an electric guitar. Cool. I do have, in terms of the EQ here, so the EQ, there's a lot of roles that an EQ can play. For a normal, I don't know, 4-person rock band, EQ is more making sure the instruments fit in with each other. For more electronic music, EQ is more used as a actual effect where you're shaping the audio. Maybe once I make some, I don't know, future bass song, I will explain that. Let's look at the bass guitar. The bass guitar also has effects on it. And if I turn the effects off, like it still sounds like a bass guitar, but it sounds thinner. So thicken up a bass guitar using a compressor. You could also thicken up a bass guitar by recording the bass guitar line on a regular guitar and then dropping it down an octave. That also gives it a bit more fullness to it. I don't do that here because what I wanted to do was make this fully playable and make it sound exactly like it does in the recording using just 4 people. Also, a third thing you could do if, let's say, that you're having trouble having the bass guitar stand out in the mix, is that you could add a little bit of distortion to the bass guitar, and it doesn't sound distorted, it just stands out a little bit more. So, for example, if I play at the very beginning, so sounds fine. I don't really want the bass guitar to be like that heavy anyways. But if I do want it to be more noticeable, let me just, I don't know, with fast distortion, yeah, sure, why not? Like if I bump up the threshold all the way, you can seriously hear it, and then if I lower it, like it still sounds like a bass guitar, just, you know, a tiny little bit of distortion, a tiny little bit of saturation that really makes it stand out. Anyways, let's get onto the drums. The drums, I hate. I am terrible at drums. I'm not a good drummer at all. If you can see in the video, in the guitar parts, I'm just, you know, having a good time bopping around. And then drums, I am locked in, man. I cannot mess this up. And I messed up a lot. So the drums I actually programmed using this program called Easy Drummer 3. So what I did was that I got on my drum set and I played something that I thought was good, and I tracked it and put it into Easy Drummer and, you know, made sure that it's actually on time. Honestly, that's what I did here. I'm not good at drums. I don't know a lot of drum theory. You just listen to some rock songs, and some of these songs have incredible drums, crazy drums. I can't do that. So I stuck with more simpler rock songs, and this is what I got basically. For the mixing, you could export all the separate parts of the kit and mix them individually. I did not do that because I'm not that experienced with drum mixing, and also I'm very lazy. Now, the final part is the actual lyrics themselves, the Vocaloid lyrics. I'm not actually using Vocaloid, the software. I'm using Synthesizer V Studio 2. Is it V or 5? Synthesizer 5? Whatever. Anyways, this is a Vocaloid competitor, and it creates more natural sounding vocals. So for example, if I go to this part, now I'm not gonna get into how this program works. Basically, put in the notes, put in the syllables, or in Japanese, the mora that you want the person to sing, the voice pack to sing, and then you adjust it until it sounds natural. And you don't need to have it sound extremely natural because a lot of the music will hide the unnaturalness. So in all the chaos, it sounds just fine as long as you are close enough. But you can kind of tell here that melodically, there actually isn't a lot going on. And I noticed that for a lot of songs in general, the singing is usually like a couple notes. I'm only using 5 notes in total throughout the entire song to make up the lyrics, right? The verse is only 3 notes because, again, to make something melodic, to make something musical, it's pitch and rhythm. So for a lot of singing out there, if you notice, if you like listen to a lot of the songs, it's 1 note that they're singing. They're just singing it with a rhythm. So that is what I do here. マクドナルドコーヒー Wi-Fi 座ってのんびりとしていつでもどこでも何でもいいよ座ったら幸せ for some reason right now I can think of Hitchcock by Yorishika. It's kind of like this, where you do have just a kind of like swinging motion, but it's not a lot of notes. You do not need a lot of notes to make a good melody. Honestly, the opposite is true. You want a melody to be simple. You want a melody to be hummable, because if it's simple, if people can hum it, if people can whistle it, then it means that it's more easily memorable. It's more likely to be catchy. This also applies to improv as well. I feel like a lot of people, when they first start to do improv, they feel like they need to really fill up all of the space with notes. That is not really what you want to do. A lot of the times, music is more about what is not being played than what is being played. So, if I get my guitar again. Side note, both guitars in this song are guitars that I built. So, in a sense, I did make this song from scratch because, yeah, I built this guitar. It took a while. It was from a kit though, so I don't know how much that really counts as build, but whatever. Let's say I want to record a new solo. Hi, Thomas from the future here. I didn't really like how I explained improvisation and soloing in the video, so I'm going to try to do it again, hopefully in one take. Now, when I'm talking about soloing, I'm specifically talking about when you are completely improvising your solo, so you don't have anything written down, just so that we're clear. When you have time to actually write a solo, completely different, you just write something good and then learn the solo. But when you're improvising, think about how your guitar is basically a voice. Everything I said about vocals and making a melody for vocals applies to your guitar. If you are a beginner, you should stick to something simpler and focus more on the rhythm than the pitches, than the various notes that you can play. Because a lot of people, when they start improvising, they learn the pentatonic scale, they learn that it works well with just about everything, which is true, and they start to improvise, and they feel like they need to fill out all of the space that they're given. You do not have to do that. It is really important to have space for the music to breathe. So to show this, I'm going to do 3 different improvisation solos that I'm going to pull completely out of my ass. And the first one is going to be someone that I imagine just learned the pentatonic scale, and they're just going to fill in the space with the pentatonic scale. The second one is going to be me doing the pentatonic scale again, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and down the pentatonic scale, and I'm just going to pause on some notes, and I think you'll be able to hear the difference. And the third one is I'm going to restrict myself to only using 4 notes. How about that? So not even the full pentatonic scale, just 4 notes, and we'll see how that works. So I'm going to do a direct into my guitar, so I'm going to use some pedals. I'm going to turn on my overdrive now, and then I'll just, I guess, press play on my foot pedal because I have that. Wow, I already fucked up a little over there. But okay, now I'm going to play something random. Well, it's not going to be random. I'm just going to go up and down the pentatonic scale and actually pause on some notes. Okay, let's see. already sounds better, right? Now I'm going to only stick to 4 notes. Cool. You know, not the best solo, but you can tell how if I'm playing slower and if I'm playing less notes, it feels more intentional because you're actually stopping, you're taking a breath, you're saying, this is the note that I'm playing. There's intention. I don't know. Play slower. Anyways, back to Thomas from the past. We get so focused on things that look impressive, that are technically impressive, that we lose sight of the fact that doesn't even make good music. Now, that being said, I do like math rock and things that are more complicated, let's say, and I do love playing like tapping runs and things. But in this context, when you are making a simple Japanese rock song, keep it simple. That's basically what a lot of this is. Keep things simple, man. Except for the chord progressions, I guess. I guess finally what we could do is we could go over the final processing chain. So the equalizer here, this is just to very slightly shape the tonal qualities of the song and everything. Stabilizer, this is an ozone thing. Oh, I'm using ozone 10, which is this entire mastering chain library thing. It is not cheap, but I've been doing this for like 7 years, and throughout 7 years you collect a bunch of stuff that is probably way too expensive for bedroom producers. But everything here you could do using cheap or free or built-in plugins. So yeah, I mean, there's a fruity equalizer, a stabilizer. Honestly, what is this? This is basically just a dynamic equalizer in a way. Impact, this is what, a transient shaper, a transient processor. So for instance, if you want the kicks to hit harder, this will make it hit harder. If you don't have a transient processor, then what you would do is you'd probably use a compressor with a longer attack so that the beginning isn't compressed, and then you would just increase the volume to compensate for that compression. Honestly, I think that's how you would do it. Imager, this is basically making things more stereo or more mono. The bass, I'm making a little bit more mono, and I'm giving more width, more room to the like high mids. And maximizer, this is just a limiter. That's basically what this is, with a soft clipper, so a little bit of saturation. But there's not really a lot going on here. This is just to glue everything together, and you could achieve all of this using free effects. The only thing is that if you are trying to produce something that is going to be distributed on distribution platforms like Spotify or Apple Music, there are loudness levels that you need to hit. So they're called LUFS, and I think for Spotify it's -16. Maybe that's the YouTube one. Or is it -14 for Spotify? Anyways, basically what I do is that I get somewhere above there and I don't really care about anything else. There are so many videos on how to actually mix and master, and if you guys are interested, you should watch those instead of this random run through that I'm doing. So yeah, that's basically it. It's not that difficult. If you're a beginner or if you are just getting into it, like, I do recommend just listening to a lot of music, taking notice of what is going on, all the different instruments, how things are changing in relationship to each other, and make music. It's fun doing stuff. It's fun creating stuff. for people who want to get more into the music theory aspect of it, more into the production aspect of it, or people who want to learn an instrument, YouTube is a very great place to learn, and I will link some resources in the description where I learned a bunch of everything throughout the years. Just don't get too caught up on everything. For a lot of artistic stuff like this, there really aren't any rules. There's just stuff that makes things sound good. So just take note of that. Don't take yourself too seriously. No one's a professional here unless you are, in which case, why are you watching this video? And we're all just having fun living our lives, making cool things. But yeah, I'll catch you guys later. See ya.